Presidential salute. Present up. His Excellency the President.
Honourable members of the Judiciary and honourable members of Parliament, you may now be seated. Honourable members of the Judiciary and honourable members of Parliament, His Excellency the President will now address the Parliament.
Honourable Chief Justice, members of the Judiciary, Honourable Speaker of Parliament, Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Cabinet Ministers, Honourable Leader of Opposition, Honourable Members, my fellow Fijians, Meu Sambulare, and good morning. It is my privilege to open the 2021-2022 session of Parliament. I thank the members of Parliament for their vote of confidence in me to assume this high office. And to my immediate predecessor, His Excellency Major General Chochi Konusi Konrote, thank you, sir, not only for setting such a high standard of leadership as our President, but for all the decades of service you have given to the pursuit of peace among people. My fellow Fijians, the democracy created under our Fijian Constitution will wither without complacency, but comes alive with public participation, as it does values and principles. So wherever you are watching, listening to, or reading this address, I thank you for your participation in the vital business of our democracy. As the youngest president of Fiji, I may not have the number of years in public life under my belt as some of you honourable members. But I have been in leadership long enough to see the difference between genuine democracy we share today and past systems that fell short of delivery of true equality for our people. I view preservation and strengthening of our democratic society as my greatest responsibility as your President. Honourable members, with due respect, you know that I will protect the flame of our young democracy from any or all who seek to extinguish it for personal or political purposes. I will use my leadership to support the highest possible functioning of the state, of the executive, to realize the objectives of the Constitution. We have far too much left to achieve, let the sideshows dominate our national discourse. We must see the forest for the trees, for politicians and personalities come and go, but our institution and the ethos of equality and strong nation state must endure. Indeed, they must thrive. As a Fijian who watched these proceedings closely for years, let me offer some perspective from the outside looking in. I know you represent different parties and may have different priorities. Regardless, you must strive to serve the nation's interest, the best interest of all Fijians, all women and children, all men, and those yet to be born. This is not the 1900s. We are not some far-flung colony in the furthest reaches of a smalling empire. Nor we are some backwater port in a vast Pacific. Our nation is home to a people who want stability, prosperity, and who are wiser and are more educated than ever before. Fiji's global star is rising. Our modernization economy sits at the cusp of recovery, and the old style of politics has no place in this new Fiji. We should not suffer politics of pettiness and personalization, or exist in some perpetual state of political antagonism. Instead, we see further than short-term political wins and towards long-term vision for the nation's progress. Each of you must strive to move beyond a perspective that is tethered to the past, or to a single religion, a single gender, single ethnicity, or a single province, because I assure you, the future does not wait for a single one of you, and we do not have a single day to spare in a meeting of the century's challenge and opportunities. After 2 full years of weathering the pandemic, I commend the nation on the success on the vaccination and effort that has revealed light at the end of this tunnel. Rather than cede the day to ignorance, we have come together in a spirit of knowledge, patriotism, and progress to fully vaccinate over 90% of adults. And I am proud, but I am not satisfied. I share our Honorable Prime Minister's ambition to vaccinate every eligible adult in Fiji, and I urge small fringe groups of the unvaccinated to accept this powerful protection against the deadly disease. It took political wisdom and diplomatic acumen to secure these vaccines. It took administrative will to incentivize their use. It took sacrifice from our frontliners to deploy them quickly, and good sense from our people to embrace them. And it took a caring and a compassionate government to pay out unemployed benefits, not in the tens of millions, but in the hundreds of millions of dollars throughout this crisis, the most assistance paid ever to any Fijian at any time of our history. Now, a long, unrelenting effort against the virus is winning us back our freedom, a freedom we must now nurture and strengthen. We have paved the way to a new normalcy. Now we must work towards together to resume Fiji's service as a hub of tourism, finance, communication, business, and transportation for our Blue Pacific. We cannot be complacent on the path of progress. We must seize this chance to free our economy from the grip of the virus and fuel its recovery. We must keep our sights focused on the greatest challenge that is before us and which lies ahead of us, that of climate change. I have seen the course of my life what climate and ocean crisis is causing now in Fiji. In my village in Nduri, my home sits 20 meters from the shore, and I have seen piles of bleached coral become mountains on the beach, and I have watched those same beaches, as well as home, disappear beneath a rising sea. I have watched coastal watersheds and crab hunting grounds become permanently covered in oceans. I have watched fishermen travel further and further to catch smaller and smaller fish to feed their families and earn their livelihoods. I have watched cane growers' crop succumb to drought conditions, and I have seen arable land inundated by seawater and is ruined for farming. I have not only seen all, I have lived it as a fisherman, as a farmer, as a father, and a grandfather. And I know from what I've seen around the world, this is a global crisis, a shared trauma for our children on both sides of the equator that can only be addressed through global solution. And I welcome back the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Attorney General, and Minister responsible for climate change, and the Fijian delegation from the 26th Conference of Parties, COP26, in Glasgow, Scotland. I was inborn during Fiji's presidency of COP23. I know from experience that these 2 short weeks of negotiations determine decades of climate action or inaction. In fact, I was scheduled to fly to Glasgow for this COP, but my election to this office demanded I remain. Honorable Prime Minister, I wish to have been with you. It is appalling to learn that our small Pacific delegation of negotiators were outnumbered by representatives from fossil fuel companies. the industry most responsible for climate crisis by a factor of 12 to 1. That means that for every Pacific negotiator fighting for our future, there were 12 corporate representatives fighting to sabotage it. If only we could have sent an army of Pacific people with you to COP26. They could have filled the halls of those negotiations and carried a message to the world. That is what we need, more of our voices, Fijian voices and Pacific voices in these global negotiations, not fewer. And I thank you for speaking and working so passionately in support of this cause and in support of our national security. I worry that some of us do not appreciate the threat this crisis poses and the vehemency of the opposition Fiji faces on the world stage. I worry that some, blinded by political ambition and machinations, have lost sight of what is happening in the grassroots due to climate change. I fear they are blinded to the forces of industry and some of the high-emitting nations who willfully ignore Fijians and countless others suffering on the front line. I urge these doubters to look objectively at what the UNFCCC process and Paris Agreement to entail and how these negotiations function. Any sensible mind will see exactly why we must amplify Pacific voices with it. But if you won't look there, look around you. Look at the communities and see what this crisis is costing us. I assure you that cyclones, rising seas, erratic weather patterns, and dying reefs in Fiji, they do not play politics. So before you choose to attack our climate leaders and politicize an issue of such importance, please pause, think of the suffering that the climate devastation has caused in Fiji and across the globe. More importantly, think about what it will cost us, what it will cost our children, grandchildren, and all those Fijians yet to be born. Their future is worth fighting for. You cannot claim to stand with those future generations and our people on the front line of the climate catastrophe if you do not stand behind Fiji's climate leadership. And I need to remind us, the real work does not only happen in conference room. The real work is not only written on paper in pacts or agreements. The real work also happens at home. This is where the government is leading most of all. I know because I have seen that work, because I have been privileged to be part of it, and because of it, amid the tragedy of the climate crisis, I have seen hope. I have seen solutions come from nature, and I have seen solutions come from new technology and innovative practices. I have seen wisdom of past generations being applied to these modern times and set us towards sustainable living. In partnership with government, we legally recognize sustainable management of the Great Sea Reef that falls under the stewardship of the Maduata province. Formalizing measures I had long sought to put in place to protect local biodiversity. We have seen hope in world-leading legislation. We brought a Climate Change Act to the world at COP26 that legislates the same commitments we are asking all nations. Because we do not only seek more hopeful future from others, we are creating it for ourselves. We have banned single use of plastics and styrofoams, and we have successfully prosecuted developers who devastated our beautiful reefs and mangroves in Malolo, building a powerful wall of legal precedent to protect our ecosystems. We have seen hope in government's effort to build resilience of infrastructure and of the entire communities and move others to higher ground and adopt clean energy like solar. We have seen how our disaster readiness has improved to offer advanced warning storms that saves lives. We saw hope in Glasgow during the climate negotiation, hope that Fiji will deliver. I was proud that our Honourable Prime Minister was one of the very few leaders in the world to speak openly and consistently against coal and other fossil fuels at COP26. And that final outcome, the Glasgow Climate Pact, included the need to phase down coal and phase out fossil fuel subsidies. It was one of the many markers of success of COP26, owed in part to Fijian leadership. The pool of finance we need globally to develop clean energy and adopt communities in climate vulnerable countries was doubled. And the finance that has been pledged by developed nations will carefully monitor to ensure that it is actually delivered. Over 100 countries signed on to reduce methane emissions, the single most damaging greenhouse gas. A dialogue between parties was established to discuss an arrangement to address loss and damage as a result of climate change, a matter that must be fine-tuned at COP27. As nations agreed rules on carbon offset markets, which the last two COP tried and failed to finalize. For that, Fiji is a big win. I urge members of land-owning units to work with the Climate Change Division to identify how carbon trading can produce sustainable livelihoods and income by simply keeping trees on the ground, planting more, and adopting proper forest management practices. But perhaps our proudest achievement is that, at long last, oceans have a home in the climate negotiations. The ocean pathway was a fragile idea that voyaged from our islands to the world through the Fiji's presidency of the negotiations in 2017. Now, the Ocean Climate Nexus forms the basis of global ocean climate governance, opening a vast new sea possibilities for Fiji and our 1.3 square kilometers of Blue Pacific. It is important, it is most significant global development on oceans in years, and the timing could not be better for Fiji as we lay the foundation for a sustainable economic recovery, a blue and green recovery that preserves Fiji as a frontier of well-managed and pristine natural beauty. I want to speak to you for a moment on that recovery, particularly the rebound of our tourism sector, because of the profound importance it bears to so many families. Because our national carrier weathered this COVID storm with the support of government and financiers, it is ready to fly our visitors to our shores from 1st of December. As those tourists arrive, we must remain as COVID safe as possible and unite our employers, employees, and government behind a sustainable comeback for the industry. The recovery of our tourism sector and of our economy won't be measured in months, but in years. But it will not happen if we get greedy and try to sprint our way to recovery by hiking up prices in our hotels and restaurants. That short-sightedness will scare the tourists away to other attractively priced destinations that are offering vacation deals of a lifetime. Fiji's brand must stand out in this highly competitive sector. Government has empowered our hoteliers and tour operators to do so with practical incentives, reduce duties and attract tourism packages so that we can be price sharp, COVID safe, and capture a big share of the market. The next month should not be focused on short-term margins but on long-term market share so that our people not only get their jobs back but keep them. And to build on this economic momentum, business and individuals should seize this opportunity for investments and commence now while the constructions of homes, apartments, warehouses, shops, and factories to take advantage of our economic recovery and help diversify our economic base. And to support our march towards a modern and caring Fiji, the government will put forward bills for consideration in this legislative session. Child Care and Protection Bill, Child Justice Bill, Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission Amendment Bill, Landlord and Tenant Bill, Investment Fiji Bill, Water and Sewerage Services Bill, Architects Bill, Terrorism, Suppression of Finances Bill, Civil Aviation Bill, the Civil Aviation Accident Investigation Bill, Civil Aviation Security Amendment Bill, Statistics Bill, Corrections Amendment Bill, Search and Rescue Bill, International Mediation Bill, Industrial Hemp Bill, and the Development of Formal Settlements Bill. Honorable members, our third genuine election of equal votes of equal value may occur during this legislative calendar. The next election should not become a battle of dividers or people who pit province against province, religion against religion, or ethnicity against ethnicity. We should not only ignore candidates and party leaders who engage in that sort of politicking, but condemn them loudly, and together, voters deserve better. Elections are the opportunity to choose who is best to lead them, who has a sound philosophy and policies that create stability, that builds confidence and ensure equal treatment and equal opportunities as provided for in our Constitution. And every voter must understand clearly and specifically what vision different parties represent, what ideas and plans they bring to the table, and how they plan to finance their socio-economic policies and legislative ambition. Those who seek office must approach the campaign with compassion, with dignity and understanding, and they must stay high by adhering to the principles of ethical conduct rather than go low by seeking votes at any cost. Merit must matter in our elections, just as it does across our civil servants, for our boards that govern our companies. I have personally served on a number of boards, including Fiji Pine, Chopping Wood, Fiji Airports, FSC, Fiji Coconut Mill and Fiji Rice, where I have been privileged to work alongside well-qualified, merit-appointed colleagues. I cannot stress how impactful merit-based leadership can be in steering our industries towards success, better jobs, and greater prosperity. Without merit-based selection, our companies, our civil service, and even our government would serve the interest of a privileged few rather than serve the people as prudently managed, sustainably profitable, and a service delivery-centric organization. Honorable members, do not forget that these are still the defining years of our new Fijian democracy. The eyes of the nation and the world are upon us now, as we will be the eyes of the coming generation, who will learn from the President we set. We have much work before us, and your effort to address the challenges of the day must be embodied in legislation, debate, discussion that empowers all Fijians through visionary leadership. And as I conclude, honorable members, I beg your indulgence. To the people of Maduata, my people, the one of Zamoteleu, you have been part of my journey, and I believe it's appropriate to acknowledge and thank you. Thank you all. Although I am head of state, but I will continue to serve you as Tui Maduata. May God bless you all. May God bless Fiji. And thank you.